Hi, and welcome to Chapter 25, Objective 2. And what we're going to look at is some different productivity rates for some different countries around the world. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you. In this particular video, we're going to look at the future economic situations of different countries and some of the things that play a role in productivity. So when we compare different countries' productivity, there's lots of different things that we look at. And we're going to talk about some of these in later objectives, but obviously income levels would be one. So that's one. As well as things like corruption and things like health and education. So if you're interested in particular countries, one thing that you can do is go ahead and click on this hyperlink over here, which takes a look at the global economy using different sources from the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations, and the World Economic Forum. Kind of interesting if you want to compare some different countries. This I always give to students as a helpful hint is that you might want to use these for other papers and other classes where you're talking about specific groups or so on, because it can help add a few pages to a minimum requirement. So let's use that kind of context right here, okay? Economic levels and different kinds of things. When we take a look at our first picture here. So this is a developed economy in the United Nations. Again, looking at 2014, average income would be $39,040. And again, about 0.04% would die before reaching the age of 5. Sanitation an issue, not an issue in this developed economy. Educational is high, and 60% are enrolled in higher education. So let's take a look at another economy. This is a developing economy. This is Mexico. Again, middle income country. Notice that the income per person is a lot lower when we take a look. And again, this is adjusting for exchange rates. We have a little bit higher infant mortality rate. And again, when we talk about college education, only about 30% in this particular economy. Here we have an underdeveloped economy, a poor country, and income per person, 1,510, very high infant mortality rate, not a lot of access to sanitation. Then we talk about health, and in terms of modern sanitation, educational attainment is low, and of those college age, only 7% are enrolled. So these are some of the bigger statistics that we use when we compare. But kind of come back and look at these kinds of things. What about corruption? I think there's probably less corruption in the UK and a much more formalized system of law and governance than there is in Mali. And again, taking a look at all of these, you can kind of see why it's drastically different in each country. Again, do they have the ability of land? You know, land here is not very fertile. Land in the UK is. Labor, not a lot of skilled labor here in Mali, whereas we have a much higher educational attainment in the UK, therefore greater productivity. And capital, obviously, there's not a lot of electricity here in Mali. So when you talk about capital and machinery, the machinery has to be gas powered, how much gas is available. So all of these factors are kind of what we look at. Okay, that's the end of my particular segment, but what we're going to do is I want to show you a video that talks about geography in terms of productivity. Okay, so I'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks.
Think about some of the biggest and most prosperous cities you've been to. What do many of them have in common? Water! They sit on a major coast or on a major river. This map shows GDP density, how much GDP is produced per square kilometer. You can see that the coasts of the US and the areas along the navigable rivers of the Great Lakes regions are just chock full of GDP. Likewise in Western Europe, in Japan, along the coast of China, and the coast of Australia. Why is this? It's much cheaper to transport goods over water than over land. So, Adam Smith argued that access to water reduced the cost of trade and gave merchants access to larger markets. In turn, larger markets gave merchants a greater incentive to specialize and to innovate. As a result, civilization grew where trade was easiest. Even today, countries that are landlocked are on average poorer than countries that have access to a coast. What's the most landlocked continent of all? It also happens to be the continent with the most poor countries, Africa. First off, Africa is enormous. You can fit most of the United States, China, India, and a lot of Europe into Africa. That's big. Second, Africa is landlocked. While Africa is far bigger in total size than Europe, if you just measure the coastline, Europe has 2 to 3 times more coastline than does Africa. And because Africa is big and landlocked, trade is more expensive and economic growth slower to start. What we learned from this foray into civilization and geography is 2 things. First, being landlocked is like a natural tariff, a natural tax on trade.
And if natural tariffs are bad for growth, then perhaps tariffs created by governments aren't that great for growth either.
Second, growth is not just about policy. Some places have natural blessings that have helped those places to prosper,
And that too helps us understand our world.